Hey there, this is Natalie, and this is just a quick video taking a look at something Tappei Nagatsuki said that's added to speculation about whether or not he'll be continuing to update the ReZero web novel, now that the light novels, at least in Japanese, have nearly caught up with the existing web novel content in Arc 6. Just as a quick side note, I'm still working on the Tome of Wisdom theory video and the analysis of ReZero Season 2 Episode 12, but I've had a bad couple of days. My grandmother died actually, so I've not really had my mind on the videos so much, and I just wanted to do something a bit more casual and newsy right now, like this one, rather than the really thinky stuff for those. So I hope you guys will find this one interesting, but if not, the other videos will be out in the next couple of days. So enough of that. What did Tappei say exactly? Well, I only speak the basic weeaboo Japanese, so I'm referring to a tweet translating the important parts from @lorem_ipsum_verb, who incidentally is a great account to follow if you're a ReZero fan, because they post pretty interesting trivia about ReZero daily and are also able to translate Japanese to English, which is really helpful for stuff like this. Now, their tweet says, quick translation of the relevant bit from Tappei's post about the web novel. The main story is finally catching up to the web version. What on earth am I to do? What will happen? I shall be awaiting your impressions for volume 24 while I savour these feelings of suspense. Which they follow up with, not sure if my quick translation conveys the tone, but he's teasing us. I think this may bode well for the web novel. Now, to give you some background, Tappei has, throughout the life of ReZero so far, been writing the free web novel, which he posts chapter by chapter, and then refining this down into the official light novels, which are what's adapted into the anime and the manga. The light novels are essentially the final draft, which is treated as canon, which you'd think would mean they're better. But while they are more streamlined, the more experimental way that Tappei's free to write with the web novel drafts does mean that there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff in them that would perhaps be seen as a bit too convoluted or unnecessary for the light novels and anime. And so a lot of people really love that there's a chance to read all of the stuff he was thinking would go into this story and pick up those extra details, as well as being able to, at least when it's being updated regularly, have new ReZero content in the form of new chapters, available much more often and with more of the surprise element than with official light novel releases. It takes the publisher and everybody else involved in things out of the equation and allows people to feel connected directly to the author's work. This is why a lot of people would be sad if he decided that updating the web novel didn't make any sense now that the light novel had all but caught up, and decided that for Arc 7 and onwards there would only be light novel releases. There are also other reasons, such as having to wait for official translations if you don't speak Japanese. With the free web novel, it's never really been seen as anything shady for people who can to translate the content and make this widely available to fans in their own languages. Translating officially licensed light novels that are a product people are already making a living working on and making them available publicly is something that's a lot more iffy. It's the same for me reading you out bits of translations of the web novel in my cut content videos. I wouldn't do those kinds of full scene readings with licensed official books that there would be paid audiobooks out for from the rights holder. I'm not a lawyer, but I am someone who makes a living selling books I actually wrote, and that sort of thing just isn't ethical. With a web novel, sharing around the content, translating it, talking about it, all of those things are positive for the author and for the fans, and so having it has been kind of important in making the fan community what it is. At least in the West, where if we only had the light novels, we'd either have to remain far, far behind the story that's actually available in Japanese, waiting for the official translations, or be translating and sharing content in a way that maybe we don't feel so great about. And that's without even going into the fact that a lot of people prefer the word choices made by some of the fan translators over the official translations of the light novels. I've mentioned in a few of my videos that I really prefer the way some characters like Garfield's dialogue is in some translations to how he's subbed in the anime and translated in the light novels. And there are lots of little things like that. Even things like the spelling of some characters' names that some people just like better in fan translations of the web novel, at least in the English version. I'm not sure if it's the same in other languages too. It also means with the chapter-by-chapter updates, there are just more new content events for fans all over the world to get excited about, and that keeps engagement up with ReZero. But if the web novel is good for the author and the fans, and part of that is down to the way it's released regularly, then how did the light novels end up almost catching up to the web novel? Well, basically Tappei hasn't been working on the next parts of the story for quite a while, at least not in a form he's ready to show us. He's been working on the light novels, and he's been heavily involved in the anime, as well as some other projects related to ReZero, like games, and a new unrelated anime original series. This is by no means some George R.R. Martin nonsense where he's been off doing cameos in Sharknado and blogging about sports instead of writing the stuff everyone's waiting for. It just seems like the tasks associated with being the creator of ReZero have been different from in years when his main objective has been to write the next chapters. Now, it would make sense for his focus to switch back to writing new parts of the story, finishing off Arc 6, which he's left on a pretty big cliffhanger for such a long time, and starting on the very heavily anticipated, especially by me because it's going to have a lot of Priscilla and Al in it, and I want to know more about those bastards, Arc 7. He's probably pretty much done refining down the stuff he already had written, and for the anime, while we don't know how complete the second core is yet in terms of being made, it's likely at a stage that won't involve as much work from him as in the earlier stages. But if he's back to working on writing the next parts of this 11 arc story he has planned, then will we be getting it as web novel chapters first, or straight to light novels? My theory on this, even before seeing this post from him, is that he would keep producing the web novel. And that's because, writers tend to be pretty habitual about their processes once they've found something that works for them. There are a lot of different approaches to writing books. A lot of new authors starting out look up the steps involved and think that there's a right way to go about it. You're supposed to draft it, then rewrite it multiple times, and you're supposed to have all these steps you go through. But realistically, that's not what you end up doing once you're more experienced and have tried out different approaches and found what works for you, in terms of being productive and creative. Something a lot of people find works well is to write clean first drafts that they'd actually be willing to put out there. A lot of pulp fiction writers in the West have typically only ever done one draft and then polished it in edits rather than doing lengthy rewrites. And this is also pretty much how Asian web novels are done. Some Chinese zhanzha web novels have new chapters released every day, for example, and this type of approach is only possible when the content is coming pretty much straight from the author's mind, without all the traditional faffing about. And they're good. If you think something has to be over-engineered for a year to end up in a book, that's not everybody's process, or the only way to end up with something that's any good. When you consider other types of writing, like journalism, where people have to be able to say pretty much what they wanted to the first time around, because the things they're writing won't be relevant if they spend weeks fiddling with it, then it's kind of clear that the only reason people would expect that fiction would be any different is because they've been taught the one most convoluted way to write a novel that tends to get perpetuated, and they haven't yet had the experience to be confident doing something else. But that's just my little side rant about writing. What does this mean in terms of Tappei? Well, Tappei's process that clearly is working for him, both in terms of the quality of the story and in terms of his career, is to write the story he has planned out. And I don't think you can really pants something as complex as ReZero. Pantsing fiction is fine, but it's not suited to stories with a lot of intrigue and mystery, one chapter at a time, in a form that's good enough to show to his audience, and then refine larger sections of the story down together into light novels to rein in any pacing issues or overcomplications in the story that arise as he gets it all down. I'd guess he knows what's going to happen in the rest of ReZero, but it's only when he sits down to write that how individual conversations and battles and discoveries play out becomes clear to him. With the web novel, he writes the scenes as he first imagines them, and then he has this bigger picture of how everything in a novel's worth of story went down that he can use to decide, yeah, that bit went on a bit too long, or I could make this bit less complicated, or I've just straight up thought of a cooler way to do this bit. This process has worked for him, and this process has always included posting his new chapters for people to read, rather than just keeping them on his computer never to see the light of day. I don't think he'll change his process now, halfway through writing this massive epic, when everything's working really well. My point is, it's not more effort for Tappei to keep the web novel. It's steps he'd be taking anyway to write the light novels, and so unless he switched to a different process, which wouldn't make much sense given his current one is working so well for him, he would surely keep doing the web novel once his focus returns to writing new ReZero. Another point is, he loves his web novel and his readers. He's been known to play jokes with it, like the time he posted a weird harem chapter and then took it down the next day just to mess with people, which later went on to become known as the Lust If route, or when he put a joke warning for readers at the end of a notoriously dark chapter in Arc 6. He likes having this way to be in control of how he presents new stuff to the fans, and to do things to surprise and amuse his supporters with new content just on a whim, without it having to be some heavily organised thing with his publishers. I think discontinuing the web novel would make the whole thing a lot less fun for him, and, well, writing millions of words of a story is an endurance challenge, and if there's any way to have more fun doing it, an author will take it. So, if you're a web novel reader waiting for new chapters, or if you're thinking about getting into the web novel but aren't sure if there's any point if it might switch to light novels only once they've caught up, then I think Tappei's words here definitely point to there being new web novel updates on the horizon. But as a writer, I honestly never questioned whether he would switch to light novel only to begin with. I think the only way it would make sense for him to do that is if it became a part of his contract that he wasn't allowed to keep putting up this draft version for free. And as things stand, there's no way the web novel is harming the ReZero brand and the sales of the light novel and manga. If anything, it seems to be doing a good job of converting people from interested in ReZero to loyal hardcore fans, so I don't see any stipulation like that coming into play either. So, this was just a quick casual discussion type video because I thought this post from Tappei was worth talking about. I hope you found it interesting, but now I'm going to go and get back to my less rambling videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.